So first up, we do have a quorum. So first one is the approval of the TAC agenda for today. Anybody like to make a motion to approve today's agenda?
Move to approve. Second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve today's agenda. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right, moving along. All right, next we have the approval of the TAC meeting minutes from January 22nd.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right, thank you. All right, next we have C, which is the director's report. Chad?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the Technical Advisory Committee. We have a few items to report to you this morning. Also want to recognize Craig Cossert from Goddard. He would like to join in the next TAC membership, and next CPB we would request CPB to have him as membership. So we have a few items to report to you. One of them is TIP projects and status update bi-monthly, and then call for project status. Peter will be coming and helping provide the update. So before that, just want to give an overview of today's meeting. We have Unified Planning Work Program Amendment, an action item, and then some update items on project status, on congestion management process, travel demand modeling, part of the travel demand modeling, and regional transit implementation plan. So without ado, Peter, thank you.
Good morning, TAC. Peter Moore here at WAMPO. Gonna give you an update on our bi-monthly update here. So on page 23 of the WAMPO tip policy. Oh, sorry. There we go. Requires bi-monthly progress reports for projects programmed to receive WAMPO suballocated federal funding in the current federal fiscal year, or that received it in a past federal fiscal year, but are not yet finished. So we'll go through those projects here. So in our list up here, we'll kind of go through the ones that are planned to receive obligated funds this year. Or we have the Seneca 63rd and Street Bike Ped Pathway. Its anticipated let date is February of 2024 with anticipated completion summer 2024. Safe routes to school, we're working on that one, still to be determined on those dates. The Which Way video wall is anticipated to let in October 2024. The Nelson Drive realignment is anticipated to let in June 2024 and December 2025 for a completion date. The Oliver and Keachai Road intersection is anticipated to let July 2024. Still to be determined on the 53rd Street Oliver to Woodlawn multi-use path. The multimodal facility is anticipated to let in April of 2024. And the West Street I-235 MacArthur is anticipated let date in October of 2024. You can see the other projects that have yet to be completed that were obligated suballocated funds in previous years. This is all present in that packet there. And before you have the map of those projects up on the screen and also in your packet. These are the non-suballocated federal funds and the WAMPO tip after our most recent amendment, Amendment 6. This is also available in your packet and also online. And any questions on the bi-monthly tip progress report?
Thank you, Peter. And one other update item we have is safety coalition. There's a lot of work that has been happening on safety. If there are any questions for Peter? Okay, no questions, then Danny is going to, oh, you have MTP project as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, Peter. We have call for projects, and then let me request Peter again to update on call for projects. Thanks, Peter.
Okay, so as you all know, we recently had our combined call for projects for both the MTP 2050 and the new tip for 2025 to 2028. For that combined call for project, we received a total of 108 projects, and we broke them out by sponsor, as you can all see below. So very exciting news there. And just to kind of give you an update on our next steps here. So all of these projects will be reflected in our travel demand model 2050 build scenario. In a couple days here on the 29th, WAMPO staff and consulting firm PEC will score and rank these projects based on WAMPO's adopted evaluation criteria. In March of 2024, staff will provide these project information to the project selection committee. And then in March and April, we'll have PSC meetings to prioritize projects for funding. And then as soon as we have all those recommendations, we'll present them to TAC for recommendation and finally to TPP to vote on the project funding priorities. Any questions for me?
Are sponsors gonna have to present on the projects? I know we've done that in the past.
As of right now, we don't have projects or we don't have sponsors specifically presenting on projects as a requirement. If perhaps there was some, questions or other things, we would be happy to include that, but that's not a requirement at this time.
Yeah, because we did that a couple of years ago, didn't we? Okay.
Yeah, we'll, we can invite sponsors and make presentations for project selection committee. We can do that. As of now, we didn't plan because can we do that? Can we request project sponsors to? Is that something we should do? We want your input and we'll go accordingly.
I'd probably say that the PSC would probably want to meet and review and make a determination if that would be necessary or not.
Okay, thank you. So first meeting, project selection committee will meet. And if project selection requests staff to invite any presenters or jurisdictions, we'll reach out to jurisdictions and have presentations made. Does that sound good? Okay, thank you, Lynn. Thank
Peter,
you.
Yes.
this is Allison Smith at KDOT. Typically KDOT reviews new projects submitted for suballocated funding. And I'm not sure that that was built into your time frame.
I don't have it here in front of me, but we can certainly include it, Allison. Thank you. I appreciate that.
But I am concerned about, did you say 108 projects?
For both the MTP and TIP combined.
Okay, how many new projects were submitted for suballocated funding?
I don't have it right here in front of me.
Okay,
Nick,
if you could just email that to me later, because KDOT staff will need at least a month to review projects. At least, if not more. So that's something we typically do for all of our suballocated projects at MARC. And we just look for red flags and eligibility. So yeah, we need to talk offline.
okay, thank you, Allison. Any other questions for MTP 2050 call for projects?
Thank you so much, Peter. Appreciate it. I think next item we have Danny Lasher presenting on safety progress, safety meetings and safety activities at WAMPO.
Yes, hello. I am going to give an update on the ICT SAFE meeting that happened on February 7th. There we go. So at that meeting, we had Doug Bayou with Blue Windows share safety related updates about sports marketing partnerships. We also had Brian Wilson join us to talk about the Transition Council of South Central Kansas. And he presented on his organization that's dedicated to supporting individuals with disabilities transitioning to the adult world. And then I myself presented several safety updates on behalf of WAMPO. I presented about the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, the Safe Streets and Roads for All grants and the status of those, the Safe Routes to School plans, and then upcoming WAMPO and KDOT behavioral safety grants. If you'd like to check out the meeting minutes or any other information from ICT Safe, it is on our website at wampo.org/ICT-safe. Any questions?
Thank you, Danny. And just to give a context, a safety grant we applied, and then we did a comprehensive safety action plan last year. And then this is ICT Safe Coalition is including grassroots level community organizations to be part of the solution towards achieving safety, because, safety awareness is important and we cannot do alone by WAMPO or one agency. So Danny is making efforts to reach out to those community organizations so they can be part of this. And they share what are all those activities they are involved in promoting safety. For example, is it the sports authority that has fans with a plan?
Mhm.
That was an example,
Yeah, the
right?
Sports Commission. Mhm.
What was it they were doing, Danny?
Say that again, Chad, I didn't hear you.
What were they doing to promote safety?
They are doing a lot with rideshare systems and working with different sporting events in the Wichita area to promote rideshare for anybody who is drinking and needs a ride home.
That's just one example of how some of the communities, in the sporting events, how safe movement in the transportation is happening. Thank you so much. Mr. Chair, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Chad and Danny and Peter for your presentations. All right, next we have public comments. So this is the time where if anybody from the public would like to speak about anything on or off agenda. Do we have anybody online? Nope. All right, we will move ahead. So the next item is an action item. The 2024 Unified Planning Work Program Amendment 1. Danny?
So we are proposing an amendment to the Unified Planning Work Program. And just for some context, the Unified Planning Work Program is WAMPO's primary budgeting document for the planning activities during the year. And the 2024 UPWP was approved by the Transportation Policy Body on November 14th of 2023. However, updates to the 2024 UPWP are necessary to account for the removal of some tasks that are no longer eligible or necessary, some slight changes to a few tasks, and then for the addition of tasks that are not currently in the 2024 UPWP. We are in the middle of conducting the public comment period. It began on February 10th and it will go until March 3rd. So far, we have received one public comment that is requesting that WAMPO consider dedicate future funding to an active transportation infrastructure investment program. And they're requesting that we dedicate that for an application. There's an expected notice of funding opportunity that should come out in the winter. Okay, I'll go ahead and dive into the changes in the amendment, or the proposed changes in the amendment. First, there are 3 tasks that we would like to amend, starting at subtask 1.2 for budget and financial monitoring systems and preparation of the 2025 UPWP. For that one, we want to include the audit consulting services for this year and the following 2 years. Also, a change to subtask 2.2 or other long-range planning to include the Safe Streets and Roads for All demonstration grant tasks that we recently have learned about in December. And then another change to the subtask 6.1 travel demand model, which would include staff tasks related to supporting the selected consultant in the travel demand model update tasks. The proposed changes would also remove the following subtasks. So first, the current subtask 2.6 consultant services for video creation would be removed as more videos are not necessary at this time. Subtask 6.3 consultant services technology and innovation equipment purchase through collaboration with KDOT. It looks like the plans that we had for that are not going to be eligible for CPG reimbursement. And then finally, the proposed changes would add 4 new subtasks. So We would add 2.3 for Safe Streets and Roads for All grant assistance, and this would involve hiring a consultant that would help us with an application for the SS4A implementation grant. The next one, 3.8, would be for the Safe Routes to School development. That one would also allow us to hire a consultant to help with the development of those Safe Routes to School plans. And then a new subtask 6.3, which would replace the removed one for Intelligent Transportation Systems, or ITS. And then this one would involve hiring a consultant to update WAMPO's regional ITS architecture in 2024. And then finally, a new 2.6 for the WAMPO's K-15 corridor management plan, which would just include WAMPO's contribution to that plan. While I'm on this slide, I also am going to mention that you have at your spot a UPWP document with the changes that are listed in there. There is a slight amendment to the amendment for subtask 6.3 that we're proposing to add on page 30 of that document. It currently, on the very last sentence there for subtext 6.3, it currently is talking about the anticipated completion be in December of 2024. We would like to amend that to be completion in March of 2025. The funding would stay the same. However, there would be additional funds that would reach into 2025 for that. So keep that in mind. We'll come back to that. Okay, and then also in your packet and in there, you will see this table, which is just a summary of all of those changes that I just talked about. This table shows the original funding, the revised funding, and then the changes. It also shows the page numbers and then the reasoning for each of those changes. And then finally, if this amendment is approved, the CPG and local match expenditures in the 2024 UPWP would total $2,494,850. Okay, before we get to the action item itself, are there any questions or comments?
No, I don't think there is.
Okay. So your options are to recommend that TPP approve the UPW Amendment 1 as presented, recommend that they not approve the amendment, or recommend that they approve with specific changes. We staff recommend that TPP approve the UPWP amendment with specific changes to account for that slight change to that last sentence on subtext 6.3.
So would anybody like to make a motion to approve it with the recommended changes for 6.3 as well?
I would move that we recommend the TPP adopt the amendment with the proposed changes to subtask 6.3.
Do we have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Or we have a motion and a second. All approve, say aye. All oppose? All right, thank you. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
All right, next we have item 5A, employment projections. Peter?
Good morning again. So in collaboration with JEO and the Wichita State University Center for Economic Development and Business Research, we also developed a set of employment projections for the WAMPO regions. And I want to emphasize that these projections reflect how many people work in a given geographic region inside WAMPO. Geographic region meaning something like Wichita, Derby, Andover. It's how many people work within those borders. Not necessarily people who live that are just employed at anywhere. So I'll bring those up on the screen here. And then these are also available on your packet on page 19. Any questions for myself?
No? All right, well, thank you,
Okay.
Peter.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, we have item B, congestion management process. Mike Balone.
Good morning, members of the committee. Again, my name is Mike Malone. I've presented before on the travel demand model update, and we're here to this morning to present on one of the specific subtasks of the travel demand model update, which is the congestion management process. Lonnie Berkland is here with me today, and he's been leading the technical development of that project throughout its duration, as well as helping with other tasks on the travel demand model. So we've given a very high level overview of this previously, but Lonnie's going to give a more comprehensive review of it today, and a draft report is prepared for you also to review. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lonnie.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Well, it's great to be here. Mike mentioned I'm Lonnie Berkland with JEO Consulting, and we've been working through the congestion management process for WAMPO, really as part of our overall project with the travel demand model update. As you can see there, where it's plugged in, it's been a great effort. Pretty big team effort, working with lots of stakeholders and in coordination with your MTP 2050 plan, some survey information that's been going on, and so forth. So we're excited to share at least a brief update, a little more information about that process here today. So in terms of the CMP itself, it's really intended to be a guiding framework. So an overall process or sort of a high level outline, really to equip WAMPO with sort of another tool or another lens to evaluate projects through, specifically focused at managing congestion. And so congestion management process for an MPO, as you see there, is intended to be systematic and kind of a regionally accepted approach, bringing in all modes of transportation. And it really relies on accurate and up-to-date data. And so annually, as projects are being reviewed and things are updated on the network, it's a way to really look at performance measures at the end of the day and updated statistics to say, how are we doing in the region in terms of overall congestion, which I can tell you right now in Wichita is pretty good. So kudos for two lots of you and folks that are working on projects that impact congestion. This is a way basically through this plan, this deliverable, which is kind of a final draft of a report right now, is a process for WAMPO to basically evaluate projects, see how things, like I mentioned, are moving the needle on congestion as subsequent tips are put together, come up with some of those strategies, and ultimately get things funded and implemented in kind of a cyclical process to then evaluate those things and say, how are we doing once we've implemented those projects, again, related towards congestion. This graphic here illustrates Federal Highway Administration has kind of an 8-step process or an overall workflow that they utilize. The nice thing about a CMP, it's not overly restrictive in terms of DOT and FHWA. It's not really a prescriptive model in what you have to put together. There are a few expectations, some federal performance measures that are required, and we'll touch on those in a second. But it allows you to have the freedom to, talk with stakeholders, talk with the public, get feedback and input, as they go through that cyclical MTP update process and to measure progress. So some of the key activities that we worked on with this was we did some initial brainstorming and discussions with staff, some of the agency stakeholders, looked at some best practices review across the country. What are some other MPOs doing for their congestion management process? Because there are differences, and you can imagine kind of East Coast, West Coast, and in between, folks with different levels of congestion, have different thoughts on what their process is and how it's tailored for them. Did some surveys, and we'll share just a couple of results of that, but many of you have seen some of the good survey work that's been going on as part of the MTP 2050 plan. So we sort of ingested a few questions in there related to congestion. Staff helped us carve those and get results out. So that kind of fed into this model as well. Defined the network and analyzed some of those survey responses. again, looked at those regional objectives and at the end of the day, kind of came up with this list of performance measures so that as you march along and start to look at and evaluate projects for things that improve congestion, how can that be done? So regional objectives, probably no surprises here. Again, those things are consistent and coordinated with the ongoing MTP. It's all about improving safety, efficiency, reliability on your network, which is a big one, and then just overall mobility. So those have been woven into the CMP document that you'll see as well. In terms of defining the network, a lot of the data sets, things that staff can pull data from, annually and as years go along, it's really focused from a congestion standpoint, as you might imagine, on more of the high volume network, what would be perceived as being a congested network. So some of the interstates, the freeways, the major arterials. Did want to include major collectors, although all data might not always be available on those. There's ways to, as you bring projects again, looking at those at least to say, hey, are there things that we can be doing to help improve congestion even on some of our major collector systems? So that was sort of the sandbox that was thought about in terms of the definition of the network in this CMP. Performance measures. So again, we're talking about things that are trackable, that are repeatable, things and data sets that are reliable, day to day, year to year, things that staff are, more easily able to pull down. This is not intended to be a process that creates a whole bunch of, fiscal constraints on needing to purchase a bunch of new data or implement new softwares or data collection in the field, things that are really onerous. There's a ton of data, as you all know, that are out there in the transportation industry, but really the process is intended for staff to be able to be a little bit thin, quick, and efficient and use kind of tools at the disposal to evaluate the system in terms of congestion. I mentioned the federally required performance measures. So there's a few that were woven into the document that you'll see, and then some follow-up localized parameters that'll be utilized to sort of run through that lens. And so from a performance measure standpoint, there's a few in terms of federal ones that are geared at travel time reliability. So interstate and non-interstate level of travel time reliability. And then truck travel reliability. So those things are all geared towards saying, hey, how reliable from a percentage basis. There's some different statistics you'll see in the draft plan there on how those things are calculated. All of this for several of these uses this National Performance Management Research Data Sets, or what we call MPM RDS, which is a little bit of a mouthful, but that's a model that's based on national vehicle probe data that's provided. And so staff have ability to dig in and use those tools. As part of our effort and just doing some ongoing training with the model, we're going to help staff get accustomed to probably running those reports if they don't already know how to sort of report on some of these stats and these things moving forward. Annual hours of excessive peak hour delay is another one that's looking at sort of excessive delay during peak periods on the network that's included. There's percentages of thinking about multimodal of single occupancy vehicle users, some of those non-motorized users. So tracking those percentages, which comes from typical census tract data. Overall, other system delay and travel time uncertainty. There's some performance statistics again that rely on this NPM RDS data set, and then also some of the modeling parameters that are being developed that we can help staff sort of annually analyze. Another one that's interesting that folks wanted to include was incident clearance time. So Whichway's been doing a great job since that implementation on getting crashes and incidents cleared. So there's some good things there to report on to say, hey, how good are our responders doing and some of the technologies that we've implemented in a region. And that's pretty cool to see too, in terms of rolling up some of those things. So just some examples of this, and they're not all represented here, but I mentioned the percent of non-single occupancy vehicle travel. So that current percentage in the region sits at 10.3%. And you can see in the table there in terms of those other parameters. So that's one that can be rolled up to document that as projects again go along. I mentioned the incident clearance time, pretty significant results from 2013 to currently 22. You can see there some implementation of which way. And since that time, those average clearance times have gone down from 177 minutes on average to 55. So less than an hour. And so tracking that again as growth happens, as the region expands and you get more population, more travel, certainly even any reduction of that is awesome, and even trying to maintain, right, with projects and things. So again, more good work that's done and a performance measure that can be relied on when evaluating future projects and funding initiatives. So a couple notes on data collection and system performance. We did some additional stakeholder outreach. Some of the agencies also did some public surveys. There's just a couple sample questions here. One of them that we put out to folks was, how often do you experience traffic congestion in the Wichita Metro? So as you can see there, more than 50, almost 60% said, you know, maybe weekly or less. Actually about 28% said daily or weekly. So about 60% of folks said that. 40, you know, it was much less frequent than that. So interesting to see. The other note I'd say there, the second bullet, some of our agency stakeholders said, you know, what we see, and I think this was consistent with some of the feedback we've gotten, is that congestion in, you know, WAMPO region is really more so due to non-recurring instances. So crashes, construction activities, more temporary things. And that was good to see too. And I think that was pretty consistent with some of the other results that we've received. Couple other things, asked folks to please identify what you consider an area of greatest concern. So we've got a list of some locations that were kind of a hot button list of stakeholders in the draft report that you'll see, but also asked folks to kind of pin a map and created a hotspot map of where congestion is. A lot of it's some of the big interchange locations, some of the big movers that you're all familiar with. But it was good to see that there was consistency amongst locations listed by our stakeholder group. And then in turn, also some of the crowdsourced data that we got from those public survey results. The other thing that did was also, as we've been working on the travel demand model, lo and behold, that's also been pretty consistent with some of these other measures that we've looked at. So when we say volume to capacity or V over C ratio traffic flow plots, which is what's shown there, or using the NPM RDS network tools, a lot of that stuff, again, really was consistent, really aligned itself to feedback from public and others. So it's telling us at least that whether you're looking at real world field data or some of these models and tools, you're going to be able to implement a process that sort of says, hey, I think this is where the culprits are for most of our congestion. And as projects come forward in the future, which ones can we do and evaluate and run some scenarios to see, at least again, from a congestion standpoint, which ones will help us out. So, you know, the intent with the CMP is really to then start coming up with strategies. So identify those things, whether that's, you know, traffic flow optimization, maybe it's signal timing or technologies implemented on major corridors, enhancements to public transportation, other technology and ITS solutions. I think you heard Peter and folks talking about some of the architecture updates, maybe looking at some of those things again, or overall demand management. really with the idea that, you know, as you assess those strategies, again, re-engage with stakeholders about those strategies. You know, you'll start to develop year to year kind of this portfolio of, hey, what things work really well in the Wichita region to reduce congestion. And so you can continue to get a little bit smarter and smarter on managing, you know, funds and implementing programs and projects that are focused at that, which is a good thing. In terms of programming, implementation and evaluation, again, the thought is that as you kind of look at this congestion management process, come up with some of those strategies that get incorporated into your MTP priorities, and projects eventually end up in the tip. Get projects funded, you reduce congestion, improve safety most likely, you know, and that process kind of starts over. You evaluate those projects after they've been implemented year to year and say, again, what do those stats look like? How good a job did that effort do with the dollars spent on reducing congestion? You know, and it gives you some benchmarks for future planning. So in terms of what's next, you know, we'll be back for the policy board in terms of a presentation, and then looking for approvals from both the TAC and the policy board on that CMP. So with that, I would entertain any questions. Yeah.
You mentioned, I think early on that you surveyed other communities. Like who and what were you looking for?
Just in terms of best practices review, you know, we looked at some of the other MPOs, Ohio, few, I think West Coast, California, Sandag, some of those agencies, just to look at some of that CMP process as well. Virginia was another one. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes.
I had a question. How do we compare in the region when it comes to the different modes of transportation, the bus and biking, you know, the 0.3 and so forth? I mean, how do we compare to like Omaha or some of those?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question, Brent. I mean, without specific stats in front of me, I would tend to say you're probably pretty typical from Midwestern regions that we see. You know, you're still at a point where sort of north of 85% of folks are probably their typical person, mom or dad commuting to work, single occupancy vehicle. But certainly, you know, I'd say over the last 5 to 10 years, there's been some good strides with more folks commuting, maybe not even necessarily with a huge flux of transit, but some of that. But certainly, you know, as trails networks get better, there's more connectors into kind of downtown areas between live, work, play. You know, we've seen an increase on folks using, you know, bikes to commute to daily. But, you know, by and large, I would say there's work to do there. So as, you know, as projects come forward, or if there's real things that are, you know, development based or unique uses, right, that afford the opportunity to really connect sort of residential areas to work areas, it's a great thing to be thinking about, you know, multimodal networks. I think there's work to do there.
Any further questions? Oh, go ahead.
Comment. I think Brent had a great comment. Some of these, you know, transit and bike ped can offer solutions to these congestion problems. Like, you know, how do we shift traffic from single occupant to? It's a great question, Brent. Something to, you know, put in strategies type of thing. How these other modes can help even out the congestion. Thank you, man.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, that might be more of what Bill, I think, in his, you know, group is doing with the regional transit information. But also too, you know, in the study, I mean, did we look at when it came to, you know, more of the freight side of, you know, how Amazon's impacted with truck congestion and those things in the northern region, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, specifically in terms of the freight portion. I mean, what we did look at from freight was, incorporating performance measures for truck reliability network. So, moving forward as projects are thought about that help with freight and goods movement, I think there's, there'll be performance measures, some indices there that can be evaluated. Yeah. Certainly the travel demand model in itself in terms of both regular vehicles, truck traffic, those kinds of things, that's going to be a great tool, I think, moving forward for this group to use as well and evaluate projects that impact that.
All right, any further questions? All right, Mike Delaney, appreciate it. Anything we could do to, look ahead for congestion prevention? I lived in a lot of different areas like San Diego for 5 years, Japan for a couple of years, and Norfolk area, Virginia Beach for like 9 years. And like they have a lot of congestion. I know Japan, it was like sitting parking lots on the highway for long times. People would read books while they're in their car because they were just sitting there. I know Virginia, we had HOV lanes, high occupancy vehicle lanes during rush hour, to and from work timeframes. They worked out pretty good. Either 2 or 3 passenger vehicles could use those, and they were even higher speeds also for those lanes. But all those things are great. So appreciate you looking into this.
Yeah, well, you've lived in some real hot spot locations, and I can tell being here, the stress has just run out of your face. So it's a great place
It
to
is
be.
great living here. You can get anywhere around this area. A quick amount of time, you can definitely plan for that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Also, Mayor, one thing I want to add is like how Federal Highway Administration requires MPOs to monitor periodically. It's not, although it's a standard procedure of staff monitoring, 5 years ago, what were the congestion spots, and next 5 years, what are the trends and where are the locations? How is it trending? So we are just documenting those while we are looking at it. Thanks for your comment, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks again. All right, next we have item C, Regional Transit Implementation Plan. We have Bill Tro, you're online.
Good morning. I'm going to start off with an apology that I've had an issue come up this morning that I've only got a few minutes to maybe give you a quick update, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to rush out. But just to give you an update, that last week we had a series of public meetings throughout the WAMPO area. We had one in the morning at last Tuesday in Goddard. We had an online meeting over the just after lunch, and then we had an evening meeting in Bel Air. If you could go to the next slide, please. That I just want to touch a little bit on the status of where we are in the plan, and that'll include touching a bit on some of the concepts from a very general basis. If we could go to the next slide. I guess the next one. So particularly in the public meeting, we kind of use these 4 questions as kind of going through where we are in there and kind of how we want to be going through the planning process here. First, understanding the systems that are out there and the services that are available. Understanding then also what services are needed and where gaps are. And right now we're in the process of looking at options and developing packages of different kinds of service additions, service changes that essentially follow some themes. And a theme might be better support for commute travel in the WAMPO region. And that theme could include some additional fixed route service. It could include some van pool. It could include even a little bit more demand response type service. And then finally, we'll be getting to that. Okay, where do we find the money to pay for these improvements that we could be looking at? Go to the next slide. And just kind of bring you up to speed on that current status of each of the elements relative to our schedule. And I think that we are pretty much on track, which is, I think, a pretty good thing, of producing the concepts and ideas and a plan by, this summer. If we go to the next one, please. So if we look at our range of concepts, we want to make sure we're understanding our constituency. I think that's the big thing, is making sure that we understand that, if we go to the next slide, that we have a bunch of different communities within the WAMPO region. Each of them has different opportunities, different constraints, and we want to make sure that we incorporate the needs of each of the communities into the overall structure. So I think what's that really require? It requires that we are flexible and we show diversity. Go to the next slide. This slide shows our entire range of concepts that we're looking at a relatively high level, from those that may work better for commute, those that may work better for seniors that need to get to the doctor during the middle of the day, get to meals programs during the middle of the day, those that also interact with, from those suburban, exurban, really rural communities within the MPO area that still have interactions with Wichita. How do we make those connections, and what kinds of services are best for those kinds of connections? And they're all included within the entire range of alternatives that are within our toolkit. And essentially those packages that I had talked about that are associated with particular themes will come from this range of service alternatives that we're showing here. That could be a little bit of fixed route. It could be a little bit more demand response. It could be coordination with ride hailing services to provide those late night, those Sunday trips that are really, really difficult sometimes to provide. If we could go to the next slide. We also, I guess I'd already kind of touched on this, is that some of those options could include extending some of the Wichita transit service if there's dollars that can be found, if there is the need. I think those are the two big things that we want to make sure that we're incorporating into this. Is everything has to be based on a need and have a funding source associated with it. Go to the next slide. We can skip this one. So we want to make sure, as we're looking at the alternatives, that we're looking at a combination of service alternatives and who is the provider of that service. And as we're working through, there's going to be situations where some service concepts just don't work. There's going to be some agencies that just don't have the ability or are not interested in doing more in the world of transit within the MPO area, with our ultimate product being a combination or an integrated package, I guess I should say, of service. Who is our operator and how are we going to fund it? That is our end game as we come back to each of the options that we could be looking at within the area. And next. And we want to make sure, as we're looking at these, that we're understanding all of the different things that each of the operators will be doing over the course of a day, a week, a month, a year, and look for opportunities for coordination between those various services that are provided, to understand how we can provide the most cost-effective, cost-efficient services available. Next slide. And I think that is what I kind of wanted to give you an update on. And again, I'm sorry, I got a little emergency I need to be dealing with, but are there any quick questions? Well, that's a way to load that one up, Bill.
Are there any questions for Bill?
Not a question from Bill, but Bill, I wanted to thank you, your staff, and the WAMPO folks for putting on those meetings. I was able to attend the first 2 of 3, and I thought they were excellent.
Good.
And I'd like to ask everybody else, if we could, use your social circles to socialize these meetings in the future and get more people to attend. More ideas are always better.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Thank you for your comments, Justin, and thank you, Bill.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway, okay, bye.
Yeah. All right. See you. Bye. All right. Next, we have committee and partnership updates. Good, none. All right. Other business?
Just want to thank, both Bill Trow as well as Mike Malone and Lonnie, all of both the projects were progressing well, and they did a lot of work, data and analysis, and put together the congestion management process as well. So with that, Mr. Chair, thank you.
All right, thank you. Next we have adjournment. Would be
So
like
moved.
to adjourn? All right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn today's meeting, so appreciate everybody coming out in a non-congested traffic today. So meeting's adjourned.